Hello everybody and welcome to the final video in Jag Week. Now in some ways I may have saved the best till last, but I hope that you've enjoyed the rest of the week's content. If you've been watching everything so far, this is the video in which I'd love you to tell me which car has been your favourite. Maybe wait till the end of this one before you decide. What am I in today? Well, today I am in an F-Type SVR. Now, before we talk about the car's road manners, let's allow future me to show you around the car. Okay, Pastor James, thanks for that. I've got it from here. Oh, by the way, if you waited until today to do the review, it would have been lovely and sunny, but cold as hell. Oh, there's a rainstorm coming for you in an hour, by the way. Anyhow, this is the Jaguar F-Type SVR convertible. Now, I have spent not an awful lot of time in and around F-Types in general, so some of this is quite new to me, and some of it is maybe not going to be so new to all of you at home, but I'm going to do my best to talk you through the car. Now, the looks of the F-Type are a mixed bag for me. Still haven't made my mind up whether I like it or not. The more I go around the front, the more I like it. And from here, it works very well. Apologise about my shadow. It's a very, very low winter sun this morning. But there is one thing that I know with this car, because it is a fabric top convertible, it's going to look infinitely better with the roof down. So let's do that first, shall we? Now, the exterior colour of this car is called Santorini Black. It does have some metallic in it, but not a huge amount. And the interior is red Windsor leather. Got the usual Jag door handles that come out. Now, interestingly, when I approach the car, it doesn't seem to open up for me. Evidently, it's got sort of keyless entry and keyless start, but it's not the full job. So I believe the engine needs to be running to get this roof down. Yep. Or at least some ignition. Yep, okay, engine running. So let's start up that 5-litre V8. Oh, a classic radio going as well. There we go. Back it goes. Jag, give us say 12 seconds to get the roof down. It feels like a very long time. Ow! Sorry about that. Perhaps because I'm used to my Honda S2000, which is actually unnaturally quick in the roof going down department. And it's pretty upset about me having a door open. So, let's get out of here and let's go back to the outside, and then we'll get to the inside. This is, unlike its predecessor, the XK, upon which this is so structurally based, a strict two-seater. Now, doesn't that look better? That actually looks pretty damn cool, I have to say. I'm actually generally much more a fan of these cars in one of the more interesting colours. Rare, they do a really sexy blue as well, but you know what? It kind of works. Now, the F-Type SVR comes exclusively with the 575 horsepower, 5-litre supercharged V8 at the front. You have these 20-inch SVR alloy wheels, which are shod with two 65-section tyres at the front and 305s at the back, so it's certainly not lacking for grip, and it is all-wheel drive. One thing which does surprise me about the specification of the SVR, it has these nice, big, chunky steels on it. Ceramics are available as a very expensive option, but these aren't drilled or grooved or anything. And considering this is a big old car that's going to lean hard on these stoppers, I would have just thought they'd do something, if for aesthetics rather than anything else. I would like to know Jaguar's logic behind that, because it just looks a bit odd, really. Now, you've got SVR exclusive aerodynamics, little bits at the front, and you get the SVR wing at the back. Now, this is one thing about this car I did not realise before. This wing actually moves. I always thought the SVR wing was fixed just because of the way that it looks, but it isn't. Now, this is in its more aggressive position, and let's see if we can tempt it into moving, shall we? I do love keyless entries in cars. Oh, let me see. There we go. Okay, so ta-da! That is the wing stowed. Now the idea is it does do it automatically, but all the time I've been driving this car, it's been sort of just up permanently. So I think you've put it up permanently, it just stays there. Your base price for this is £118,000. Which does sound like a lot, because it is. Now, it's got quite a lot of things as standard. Got these very, very nice looking Jaguar LED headlights. You know, the grills and the bonnet. You got a lovely sexy front end. A little bit of aero. I do like the sort of retro style Jaguar badge at the front. That's pretty angry. The SVR badging, of course. Wheels standard for the SVR. I think there is a form of the wing that's standard for the SVR. It's this one being carbon is an option. You have at the back a titanium and Inconel exhaust, which unfortunately has been muted somewhat by the recent regulation changes, just like everybody else's. And I think the diffuser setup as well may be bespoke to SVR. The bodywork is generally the same, nothing sort of different there. One thing I want to talk about, let's talk about the boot, because when people talk about F-Types, particularly the convertible, they always talk about the boot. It is rubbish, okay? It is totally rubbish. There is a bag of rubbish in here to demonstrate how rubbish it is. Now, if you look, this is quite a big backpack. That will kind of absorb that. They say it's a 207 litre boot, which wouldn't necessarily be that unusable, but it's just in such an odd shape. And it's taller than it looks. See, look, it's kind of does this thing. So I can actually put my backpack over here and it's fine. But for a car which actually would make quite a good Grand Tourer, this is not great. You'll find that big old 5 litre engine under this front hinged bonnet. Now, this car doesn't seem to have a cover on the engine. I suspect that is probably because it is a press car, because there's obviously bits that a cover is supposed to sit on. I just don't think that's meant to be exposed. Maybe it is. I don't know. Could be an SVR thing. Really don't know. The majority of this car's options are on the interior. It has this beautiful red Windsor leather. Very nice to the touch. Very lovely. Love this diamond stitching kind of effect. Feels gorgeous. I believe these SVR seats are magnesium framed. They are extremely comfortable. Very nice. Most of the switchgear in here feels generally pretty high quality. There are a few missteps in here. I do like the red. It certainly makes the black exterior a bit livelier. You've got a micro SIM slot in there. You've got 2 USBs and a 12-volt socket. I like the fact they colour-coded this, and this is for a couple of cups, and they're actually a reasonable size as well. Only one choice of gearbox in this, which is automatic. One thing I want to show you guys, actually, this has started to wear down here quite badly. This is a press car. It's got about 8,000 miles on it, and this is wearing, which is not so great. But this car probably has had quite a hard life as these things go. So you sit yourself down into this car, and you are greeted with actually what is a surprisingly nice cabin. I must say I wasn't expecting it to feel this good, but really is pretty cool. There's very little in the way of low quality rubbishy plastics to hand here. Now you've got full leather everywhere, and this is probably one of the biggest options on this car. It's got this extended leather interior, which is only £1,000. It gives you leather up here, leather here, and is well worth it. Really nice, really lifts it. The other option you've got is this carbon fibre centre console with SVR branding. Personally, I think that should kind of be standard, but it's not. I don't know what you get if you don't specify it. You've also got this suede cloth, which is basically Alcantara, but by another name, because Alcantara is a brand. Steering wheel. I would much prefer leather, and considering this is £580 option, and you only get that in suede cloth and that in suede cloth, that seems like quite a lot. I'd just rather have the leather. I don't like the suede cloth surround around here. It just looks a bit cheap. It just seems doesn't wear very well, in my opinion. This being a brand new 2019 model year car, you have a new revised updated infotainment system. So to turn the ignition on, let's just do that. There you go. Taco and the Speedo do all their normal sweeps. You get SVR logo come up on here. This car does have dual zone climate. It's also got heated and air conditioned seats, which you can't activate while the car is not on, by the way. So standard system here, touchscreen, which is slightly annoying, but it's nicely integrated. It's not a tablet stuck on the dash, so that is a good thing. One thing I don't like, I mean, maybe I've missed it, but if I have, then it's a negative point anyway, because it's impossible to find. I can't find a way to turn this off. So when I'm kind of driving around at night, in particular, which I've done quite a bit this week, it being December, I want to just get rid of this. I just want it off, and I can't find an easy way of doing that. It's just switches here for icy snow or wet, whatever it is, and then dynamic mode down here, and then obviously in the middle is normal. A dynamic mode in this car is great, and you don't need any more modes. Dynamic mode is really good. You can configure what dynamic mode does. So you can have either the factory setup, which just turns everything to maximum attack, or you can have a personal setup. So I have my standard, which is basically engine, gearbox, and steering all in dynamic, but suspension in comfort. There are no in-betweeny settings. It's dynamic or comfort. Those are your two, and you know what? They work just fine. Down here you'll notice that there is still an exhaust button. Quite rare to see in cars these days. What this one does though is really, it just changes whether it cracks and pops. That's kind of it. It doesn't really change the volume all that much. Seats do look really, really nice. It actually feels very, very comfy, very sort of costed in here. There are a few missteps on Jaguar's behalf though. And I'll talk you through those because it's not a perfect car. It's not flawless. These switches feel a bit cheap and nasty. They're not the best. And that's a shame because you're kind of going to interact with them quite a bit. And when all the others are actually reasonably nice, that sucks. Meridian sound system. Horrible. Horrible, 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 horrible system. One of the worst I've ever used in a car. It has no place in any vehicle. Definitely not in a 120 grand one. This car's full final price, by the way, with options, is just over 120 grand. Is actually a very, very reasonably priced and spec'd for a press car. Another misstep, which I'll have to show you with the engine on. Okay, it's a little thing. I know it's a little thing, but I want to show you guys the car as I've experienced it. And this being a factory press car, for which I'm very grateful to Jaguar, means I've had a bit of time to learn it in a way that I wouldn't with a normal car. On your right, fuel gauge. On your left, temperature gauge. I spent most of this week thinking the temperature sensor was broken. Because on the right, you see here, you have a nice, very clear sort of meter that fills up, obviously, as you put fuel in the car and goes down as you put your foot down. On the left, though, nothing. Can't see diddly. What I didn't realise was the fact that the little green triangle there is actually the temperature of the car. And it moves from the bottom to the top. But it does so fast that by the time I go to look at it, it's already there. I thought it was just pointing out what halfway was. So maybe it's just a bit of a design faux pas. Maybe I'm just stupid. It's very, very possible, but hey-ho. Anyway, you can, however, see my trip computer. And I've set this when the car arrived on my doorstep. So I've done just over 1,067 miles. And I've averaged in that time 26.6 miles to the gallon, which I think is actually very impressive for a big old 5-litre V8. On a long trip, which I did earlier in the week, I actually achieved over 28 to the gallon as an average, which I think is pretty damn good, actually. I'm really, really impressed with that. So you can see here, there's a little button, little trigger on the back of the gear lever, which, if it will focus, there you go. So, and it resets to where it is, which I don't love, but it is nice to use and it does respond well to you. But if you put it into sport mode, it does stay over to the side. Okay. The paddles behind the wheel are actually quite nice. These metal things here, they're lovely. The action in them is not so great, but then I am really, really picky about the action on my paddles. But they do feel nice and they are real metal. I love the fact they've got the little hollows cut out of them for the up and down. And the one little party trick that all F-Types have, which you've probably seen before, is the air vents up here. So you can control them from this system. If you whack that, this will rise Lord Vader. It's a complete gimmick. Complete and total gimmick. I don't like it. It's a bit silly. And also, the top of it is one of the few pieces of not nice leather in this cabin, which is a real shame. Because it's supposed to make the car look posh, and actually it makes the car look rubbish. That should be coated in carbon fibre to match that, or leather to match this. Something like that. It's just a shame that it's like that. This screen is a mixed bag. I kind of, go away. Very, very responsive. Very, very good for typing in stuff. It obviously has a SIM card because there's one in the drawer down there. But it just, every time I've gone to search, it searched and it said it's offline, which is kind of useless. At not one point ever during this whole week has it ever been online to search. So it's not great. And the sat-nav system in here, it's all right, but it's not wonderful. But you do have Android Auto, and it does work brilliantly, and you've got Apple CarPlay as well. So that is a plus. On the whole, actually in here, kind of positive surprise. Actually, generally, much nicer than I thought that it would be. So, past James, back to you for the drive. Thanks, future me. Really appreciate it. As you can probably tell, it's been a little bit rubbish out there in terms of weather the last few days. And that's one reason that I chose to do all of the walk around stuff in the future, because at present this car is absolutely filthy. It's filthy because I've done the best part of 600 miles in it. I'm not the sort of person that likes to get a press car and just leave it sitting at the end of their driveway looking pretty. I really want to drive these things and get to know them, and I'd like to think that I've done that with the F-Type. Now, I have to admit, the F-Type really had me worried. Why is that? Well, the people at Jaguar have been really completely lovely to deal with. Very nice, very friendly, and extremely professional. But the F-Type is a car with which I've had, well, a mixed relationship, to say the least. When it came out, I just didn't really love the looks of it, and still to this day, as you'll have seen them walk around, I'm just not 100% sold on it. But in this, guys, it does look pretty tasty. It never helped that I was much more a fan of the looks of the old XK, but the XK I always felt just missed a little bit in terms of driving dynamics. Now, hopefully you'll have seen my more recent review of the XK, which with luck will have been released earlier in the week. Due to the way that things work, at the time of filming this, that review hasn't actually happened, so I can't really draw too many comparisons between the two. The F-Type also had a couple of other issues, namely that boot at the time was a big problem for me because, well, I like taking my car abroad and it's just not quite big enough for Euro trips. I did actually review an F-Type on the channel a couple of years ago, a V6 convertible, and it was alright, but I simply did not love it. It would be fair to say that it left me rather cold, and if you'd asked me back then what should you buy, an F-Type or a 911, I would have easily said go for the Porsche every single time. However, the brand new 911 in its 992 guise really did not impress me. I drove my friend John's new 992 C2S convertible and I just didn't like it. That car also is not cheap at about 120 grand. In other words, almost exactly the same price as this. On paper, the Jag is already starting to pull ahead versus the new 911. You see, the C2S will give you about 450 horsepower from its 3-litre flat-6 twin-turbo engine. This Jag, on the other hand, will give you a 5-litre supercharged V8 with 575 horsepower. That's quite a bit. Now, this is a very, very heavy car. No two ways about it. It's another thing I've never really been that fond of the F-Type for. Jag will claim just over 1,700 kilos for one of these. However, with fluids and honestly measured, you're talking closer to 1,900 kilos, heavier even than a Nissan GT-R. The SVR, of course, is the sportiest, most hardcore of all of the F-Types, and I must confess, I was really certain that I was going to hate it. I thought the ride will be bone-breaking, the exhaust will sound naff because it's the new one with the particulate filter in it, the steering will be rubbish, and the interior just won't be up to scratch, and it'll probably break during the review. For once, I am very happy to say that I was quite wrong. As this is the convertible, really this should be enjoyed with the roof down. It's a bit blustery out there today, so you'll have to excuse the wind noise, but we have at least brought a little bit of thunder. The previous F-Type V8 had an exhaust which was just, quite frankly, stupid. It was obscenely loud. This one doesn't sound bad, does it? It's not got the sheer volume or that bite, that kind of hard edge that the old one did, but it's still very pleasing, and in dynamic mode with the exhaust in its sort of sporty setting, you still get the odd crack and pop, which gives it a bit of character. With the roof down, it's actually just right. You also get the most incredible throttle response from it, and even from low down it picks up very well indeed. Of course, being a supercharged lump, it'll do its very best work when you rev it out, the red line being about 6.5 grand, but you certainly don't need to do that to make seriously swift progress. The 8-speed ZF gearbox does a pretty damn good job, but there's no real surprise there. It's a very familiar unit that you'll have seen in all sorts of other cars, including elsewhere in the Jaguar Land Rover lineup. Whether it's tuned differently here for the SVR or not, I couldn't say. What really took me by surprise though when I first got in this car and covered even the first few miles is just how good the ride and steering are. Are they perfect? No, they certainly aren't. But the car is much more supple than you would think, especially when you consider that massive curb weight. To get a car to ride as well as this and also to handle is not easy at all. Part of the reason Jaguar have managed this almost impossible combination will be down to the fact that the car has double wishbone suspension. It's a setup that I really like, and if you're going to do a proper sports car, for me, it's the only thing to use. It's odd too, I don't really think of an F-Type as a special car, but it does get an awful lot of looks and adoration from people, and that's one of the many things that's very hard to sort of quantify. Maybe it means nothing to you, but people like Jags. They really do. Perhaps it's a sense of misguided patriotism, I don't know, but the car is much loved, and in terms of getting around, that does make life a lot easier, especially if you've got to get through a city or a town or something, because people will let you out of a junction in this, which in a 911, they just won't. In 2014, Jaguar introduced electric power steering across their F-Type lineup, and I must say I wasn't expecting it to be any good. Now, while it's certainly no Porsche GT3 in terms of steering feel, it's remarkably good. The car is supremely darty, especially when you consider the huge lump out the front. But I just can't believe they did it this well. The car turns in beautifully, and in faster corners the steering weights up too to communicate to you what it is that the chassis is up to. If you're looking at buying an F-Type, particularly if you're including used cars in your search, it is a touch confusing. When the car came out, they had 2 flavours of supercharged V6 and 2 flavours of supercharged V8. You had the S with 500 horsepower and the R with about 550. They still do 2 flavours of V6, a 340 and a 380, to which they've now added a 4-cylinder. Honestly, I don't know why you would buy a 4-port F-Type. I really don't. I understand the logic behind people wanting a V6 F-Type, but believe me, if you're thinking about a V6 F-Type, you're wrong. You just are. The V6 is a bit of an engineering compromise because it is basically bits of the V8 with V6 bits stuck on top, and it just doesn't work. And if you really need convincing, let me tell you one interesting figure from Jaguar's own brochure. The official combined fuel economy using the new modern testing of the 340 horsepower V6 manual F-Type is 25.1 miles to the gallon. That's UK. The official combined fuel economy of this F-Type SVR, which is available exclusively in auto, is 25.4. Now, that's not a fair comparison. If you look at the V6 with the auto box on, it is a couple of mpg better, but honestly, seriously, a couple of mpg to lose 200 horsepower and the character of this engine? Get this, just do it. It's fabulous. Originally, the F-Type, I believe, was only rear-wheel drive, with all-wheel drive models coming later on. It wasn't long before Jaguar realised that a 2-wheel drive V8 F-Type was, well, just a way of getting rid of tyres very quickly, and so they dropped that. And these days, if you want to buy a brand new F-Type, you're going to have to buy an all-wheel drive one. But honestly, in this car in particular, it kind of suits it, and it gives it this absolutely rapid acceleration from low down, even when conditions are less than perfect as they are today. For big long journeys, the car is actually pretty comfy too, especially when you're on the motorway. It's a nice place to be. The brake pedal is a little bit overly assisted for my liking. I would prefer something with a little bit more heft required to get the car to stop. You can modulate it a little bit better. traction control there kicked in quite violently. You can really move along. Possibly the biggest issue for making progress in this car is the very high front. I know Jaguar did a lot to try and keep the bonnet line on this car as low as they could, including I think some explosive airbags in the front to raise the bonnet to help a pedestrian survive if you hit them. But it's very lost. That corner of the car is very, very hard to place, especially if you're in a car park with high curbs. There's a little bit nerve-wracking moving this car around. Very, very much like an Aston Martin. Even the shape in here, if you sort of blindfolded me and asked me, I would say, oh yeah, I'm in a Vantage. I haven't yet driven the new Aston Martin Vantage. If someone out there's got one and would like me to, I'd love to have a crack at it. But one of those optioned up, you're looking at about 140 to 150 grand, and that's less power than the Jag. Now, historically, when it comes to XK versus V8 Vantage as it was 10 years ago, the Jag always had the power advantage. It always seemed like the far better value proposition. But when it got down to it, the Aston was just the much better car to drive, felt much better put together, felt a nicer place to be, so always seemed worth the money. In the same way that the 911, although it was always, again, down on power, it just was the nicer car. Now though, really not so sure. The F-Type SVR, at least, is great to drive, has a wonderfully characterful engine, feels actually quite special. It's capable of driving many, many miles in relative comfort, and then when you want, can get a bit rude and a bit naughty. Okay, maybe it's not quite as shouty and as silly as it once was, but they've also improved things a little bit. Screen in here is a little bit better, and in this world of increasingly anodyne cars, the F-Type now stands out as something actually special. And I never thought I would have said that about the F-Type before. Before this car arrived on my driveway, if you come to me and said, James, do you like the Jaguar F-Type? I would say, and I am quite happy to admit this, no, really don't like the F-Type. Pointless car. Here's a long list of other cars that you should buy long before you consider a Jag. So if you were to ask me now, James, do you like the F-Type SVR? Well, I don't like it. I love it. And more surprisingly, I initially would have thought that it would only be a coupe that I would want. And when Jag said that they didn't have an SVR coupe for me to drive, I was a little bit upset that they were going to send me a convertible. But having spent a bit of time in it, I really kind of like it. What's wrong with me? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of Jag Week. Thank you very much for joining in. What's been your favourite? Don't forget, this is all part of British Car Month here on the channel. And next week we have 3 videos from a brand that has never before been seen on the channel. Hope you enjoy. It's been pretty good so far. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.